and welcome everyone to our Healing for Wellbeing webinars from the New Beginning Center. We're really glad you joined us. I'm Sean Baker, co-owner and executive director, and your host. And so before we get started, I'm going to go over a few tips about how we can communicate with each other during the webinar. So first off, we'll have some slides during the presentation at some point, and you can move our talking heads anywhere on your screen for your optimal viewing. Please use the raise your hand feature to let me know if you're having any kind of needs for immediate attention, such as you can't see us or you can't hear us. Please use the Q&A feature for your questions. We've got a couple questions ahead of time as people signed up, but we're certainly prepared to take your questions as we go throughout the webinar today. I'll be gathering them and organizing them, and we'll either insert them if it seems appropriate, or we'll hold some to the end. And then go ahead and use the chat feature to let us know your feedback about the webinar or to share any resources that may be helpful to us. If you need to kind of send a private message to one or the three of us, go ahead and use that. And we also may use that to kind of ask you questions and get your feedback during the webinar. And finally, we'll be recording it. We've already started recording the webinar so that you'll receive a link and a thank you after today, so you can go back and have another look at it, and we hope share with others as well. I'm really pleased with the positive feedback we've received so far for these webinars during this pandemic and subsequent global upheaval that I think has been building, but now is really kind of out there. We really see this as an opportunity to heal the pain of trauma that's resulted from the violence and prejudice and white privilege woven into the air we breathe, really woven into the fabric of each and every one of us and our collective souls. And so we're honored really to come together and present this second part of a two-part series, All of Us Together. We commit to do what we can to extinguish systemic racism and oppression, because doing so is mental health care, and that's what we're about. As last week, we expect that maybe some or much of this discussion might bring up some uncomfortable feelings for you. We really honor that as a wonderful step into awareness, which is the first step into change. So I invite you to be compassionate with yourself, to really honor your nervous system, pause, breathe, make more space for yourself and for your feelings, to really honor what's coming up for you, even if you don't understand it or why it's happening, and then ask for support. That's what we're all here for. This is a community, one large community, and this journey will take all of us together to make the change that we want to see. So I'm so grateful to have met Nicolette and Jonathan, and thanks to my oldest adult stepchild, who's a member of SURJ-Ventura, who suggested I reach out and to engage their perspective and understanding on white supremacy, white fragility, and really what I need to learn as a white person. So with that, I turn it over to Nicolette.
Thank you, Sean. I just wanted to take a moment right now and ask everyone to bring their awareness to the land that we're on. I'm in Ojai, and that's part of Ventura County. So I just want to acknowledge that we are on stolen native land here in Ventura County, Chumash land, and just to recognize the native people that have lived here and continue to live here, and all of the struggles that they continue to go through.
Thank you, Nicolette. I'm bringing up our presentation here. And while we get that going, Nicolette, as a means of introduction, could you talk a little bit about what brings you here into this moment with us?
Sure. I think my journey towards this work with racial justice started when I started learning Spanish, and I started learning Spanish in high school. Kind of progressed to opening my worldview and my friend circle and my community. And then I spent some time in another country and met some people there and had a lot of experiences, a lot of negative experiences, I would say, with the immigration system. And then just through those, acquiring that language and jobs that I've had, bilingual teaching jobs and things, I've kind of recognized another part of my community around me here in Ojai. We tend to think of it as very white here, but there's also a large immigrant community here, a large Latinx community, Hispanic community, and so just recognizing that part of my community and upbringing that kind of hid that from me. I was somehow in a bubble, and just coming out of that bubble was really facilitated by learning another language and then meeting all these people through that. And then through my work in early childhood and preschool, I got really interested in diversity and just racial justice studies with children. And that led me to my first SURJ meeting. And I've been going for, say, about 3 years. Been part of the leadership for about 2 years now. And yeah, I just keep learning every day new things. And I'm really grateful to be a part of this community. I feel like I really found my community when I came to SURJ. So.
Thank you. Yeah, resonances for me in growing up in a space that was predominantly white, and as we'll talk about a little bit more, very much steeped in whiteness, and some of the culture and ideologies that we'll be talking about more today. And I came into it through an inquiry at Pacifica Graduate Institute, where I go to school in the community psychology, liberation psychology, indigenous and eco-psychology program, around what is my community. And over the course of months, years, I came to see the ways that I had really attempted to disassociate from where I grew up in Santa Clarita, but also this thing that's pretty common of, kind of disavowing whiteness, that I'm not like that, or I'm a different kind of white person, or any number of moves that people make. And just this process of breaking that down and seeing the problems in that, and coming to I guess, come into a greater accountability with my own history and community and my family, and finding that these spaces where we can really share our experiences and the things that have been alienating, but also start building a different kind of culture, a different way to be together, and different way to interact in our communities, has been tremendously valuable. And yeah, thankful to be doing the work with everybody. So we're going to start with a little bit about showing up for racial justice, Ventura County. Oh, sorry. No, first we're going to go over communication guidelines for a brave space. These come from Aware LA, which is a partner organization. It's been doing great work out of Los Angeles since I believe the early 90s. So they are part of our lineage, and we're very grateful. I'll start us off. Welcome multiple viewpoints. Speak from your own experience by using I statements. Ask questions to understand the sources of disagreements.
Own your intentions and your impacts. Respect each other's experiences and feelings by taking responsibility for the effects of your words. On the other side, if you have a strong reaction to something, let the group know. Be open to dialogue.
Work to recognize your privileges. Use this space to recognize and investigate your privileges. For example, class, gender, sexual orientation, ability. Honor the different expectations we all bring to this space.
Take risks. Lean into discomfort. We are all in process. Challenge yourself to contribute, even if it is not perfectly formulated.
Make space. Share speaking time and try to speak after others who have not spoken.
Notice and name group dynamics in the moment. We are all responsible for this space. Be aware of how others are responding or not responding. Ask for a timeout or a dialogue if needed.
Actively listen. Use your energy to listen to what is said before thinking about how to respond. Notice when defensiveness and denial arise.
Challenging with care. Find ways to respectfully challenge others and be open to challenges of your own views. Think about how to question ideas without personal attacks.
Confidentiality. Share the message, not the messenger.
Break it down. Use simple language and background information when necessary. Ask for clarification if needed. So we use these as a way of centering our interactions at our SURJ meetings. They're also, I think, broadly very helpful principles in any kind of organization, group, or relational space to maintain consciousness of the ways that we're trying to build together and to challenge, but also to maintain graciousness as we move through and as we learn together. So a little bit about SURJ-Ventura County. This is our mission statement. So SURJ-VC seeks to end white supremacy in our community and in our nation through solidarity, action, and accountability. Together, we speak out and take action against racial injustice and show up in solidarity with movements led by people of color. We provide a space for white people to learn about their privilege and the legacy of white violence in this country that continues to permeate the systems in which we operate. Using the theory of intersectionality developed by American civil rights activist and law professor Kimberly Williams Crenshaw, we employ an intersectional lens in our analysis and action, understanding that oppression functions across race, sex, gender, sexuality, class, ability, disability, faith, migration status, and more. Understanding the multidimensional nature of oppression is critical to effectively challenging white supremacy, which is inextricably linked with patriarchy, homophobia, ableism, ageism, and other supremacist ideologies. Before we continue, Nicolette, you want to say anything more about our mission as SURJ?
No, I just feel like that's how I always explain it to people, is kind of a multi-approach. Like, we have our educational spaces, our monthly meetings, resources that we give out, have one-on-one meetings, but then we also have the part of direct action, like showing up for our accountability partners, other organizations in the around us that are led by Black people or people of color. So some of those organizations have been Cause, and right now we're forming a relationship with Black Lives Matter Ventura County. I'm working on like the Farm Worker Bill of Rights and other campaigns. So
Yeah, thank you.
That.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. The relationships in building building community across activists and really taking the lead, not taking the lead, following the lead of the other organizations in our community is a very core value. All right, so to kind of frame some of the things we're going to talk about, there's this video that we use in one of the workshops that we offer that gets into this idea of whiteness and a way of framing white versus whiteness. It comes from the Portland Community College, and I'm going to go ahead and play this now.
Jonathan, you may need to change the settings so that your audio is playing.
Oh, that didn't do the audio through the...
No.
Uh-oh. All right, let's see here. We might just have to skip that because I am not sure how to get Zoom to play the audio. So let's move on. We'll drop a link to that. Sorry. The gist of it is that white can be thought of as a racial category, a descriptor for folks in skin tone of a particular lineage, whereas whiteness is a system that reinforces dominant culture and narratives and hierarchical values. And it's helpful to distinguish between the two because often we can get caught up on our sense of goodness, and really we need to look at things in a more systemic frame often, and that helps us move through things without getting unnecessarily stuck on guilt and shame and this kind of like deep identification challenge. Not that some of that isn't also part of the work, but some of these frames can be helpful to not unnecessarily get tripped up along the way.
I'd also say it's a helpful reminder, like we're doing the inner work, but then there's also these systems that exist that, you know, once you get going on your inner work, you might feel like, okay, I'm getting this, I'm doing the work, I'm an ally, but allyship, a lot of it is showing up and really trying to dismantle the systems of white supremacy around you.
Totally. So this is a mouthful, white supremacy culture. And so this comes from Tema Okun and her work with Dismantling Racism Works. And we're looking at the way that the dominant culture reinforces systems that have rationalized white dominance within our society. So that's why white supremacy culture. Talking generally about culture, we're looking at the knowledge, experience, beliefs, values, attitudes, meanings, hierarchies, religion, notions of time, roles, spatial relations, concepts of the universe, material objects and possessions acquired by a group of people in the course of generations through individual and group striving. I really like this definition of culture for its thoroughness, and also introduction of things that sometimes we don't actively engage when we think about what culture is. Part of the work is coming to question things that can be viewed as, well, we'll just say normal. They don't feel like a culture thing. They just feel like that's what life is. And getting to a space where we can really start to question, I'll just go ahead and say everything, is really part of the process. Anything to add, Nicolette? Okay. So when we look at cultural racism, we're looking at how differences are used, sometimes overtly, often covertly, to assign value and normality to white people and whiteness in order to rationalize the unequal status and degrading treatment of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, people in communities of color. And this supremacy culture is reproduced by all the institutions of our society. And some of the ways that that shows up is what's viewed as normal, what's viewed as better, smarter, holier, godlier, what's deemed natural versus what's strange, otherness for sure. And so the task here is to look at some of the mechanisms through which this happens. So this is the list of characteristics of white supremacy culture. We're not going to dive into all of these today. When we do workshops, we spend a solid like 4 hours unpacking some of these, and we could spend more. So these are here, they're also in the slide. I'm not gonna go through and read them out. We're gonna highlight a handful of them that come up frequently in the work that we do. So one is either or thinking. And I find that this is a very rewarding thing to try to challenge. We're very comfortable with binaries or good, bad kind of ways of understanding the world. And to try to find different ways of describing things, different ways of placing ideas in relationship to each other is hard, but it opens up spaces that otherwise we're not aware of. It also simplifies things in a way that really strips the world of its complexity. Let's see, are there any of I talked a little bit about it, but thinking about the alternates or antidotes, anything else that stands out?
I want to just chime in because I think it is in line with how our nervous system operates when we start to notice arousal, or even before that, discomfort. There is a pull towards, and I guess you could use it in both directions. There's a pull towards going into either or thinking for the brain to kind of narrow down the choices. And you can also look at it from the standpoint of when you yourself or someone else you see moving into either or thinking, you might take that as a signal that you or they have moved into kind of this state of more arousal and out of creativity. So the antidote, is to kind of it might take a physical step back, to pause, to breathe, slow things down. It's a great thing that we use in conflict resolution so that our brain can go, oh, wait a minute, there isn't a threat here. Let me relax. And when my brain's relaxed, then my natural creativity of seeing that there's always several ways forward to any situation will start to naturally come back online.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, definitely. We can, we put ourselves into boxes that aren't actually there. Yeah. Perfectionism. So this one always gets a lot of love when we're talking about things that we've experienced or struggles in our lives or organizations and families and relationships. It is part of what can make folks have such a hard time with the idea of making a mistake. And when we're talking about growth and learning, the mistakes are part of it. And so there's this task of building a healthier relationship around mistake making. That's also connected with accountability to ourselves and other people. Because if we're so defensive around potentially being viewed as having made a mistake, we can warp our relationships to try to feel right instead of moving through honoring that that we're not perfect. And I'm looking at the antidotes here. Yeah, appreciation, developing a culture of appreciation, I think opens up a graciousness in our organizations and interactions. Anybody have anything to add? Okay. Back. Sense of urgency. So this has to do with what we were talking about earlier about slowing down and how that can open up new possibilities and ways of seeing and understanding our circumstances. It often means that we know that there's a way we want to be engaging, maybe in terms of getting feedback or collaborating, but can be very quick to jettison those values because this thing has to happen. And when we're talking about activism, often with very timely needs. This is something that I think we struggle with every day. And so finding a way of moving around it, moving quickly when you have to, but also not letting the goal unnecessarily take precedence over the way that we get there.
I think one of the places where I've come across the antidote for sense of urgency is using consensus rather than voting as a way to operate within the organization. It does take longer, and there can be tension created in that process, but to value that there will always be a minority voice and a majority voice, I think trying to come to that place of consensus where at least everyone can get behind the decision that's trying to be made as the group.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not doing that is one of the ways that the dominant narratives or frames are able to continue, because that value of really turning to where the other voice is or what the other ideas are is seen as an impediment to getting the thing done. So, yeah. Thank you, Sean. Individualism. So this, well, it comes up a lot. Teamwork can be a challenge. A sense that we carry that I'm the only person who can do this right or do it the best way, and taking it on individually leads to isolation. It makes it difficult to ask for help, and can invite this kind of seeking for recognition, credit, and the turn to a more cooperative way of building together takes a pressure off, and it can be uncomfortable as you kind of build that culture. But when you get to spaces of collaboration and co-creation, I've experienced that to be profoundly freeing. Other thoughts? Okay. Defensiveness. So this comes up in all kinds of spaces, lots of resonance with white fragility and the discourse around that. Also related to mistakes and that idea of the need to be right. It's often a way to avoid accountability. So something becomes not about what you did, but maybe how somebody brought up that they were impacted or hurt by a statement or action. It's also one of, it can be, if one comes to see it as such, a really good indicator of when there's something that you need to pay attention to. And the task then is to maintain awareness of defensiveness and turn to paying attention to what's happening for yourself in that moment. This also has resonances with white fragility, the right to comfort and fear of open conflict. So often folks with a certain amount of social or organizational power are able to weaponize their feeling of being threatened or made uncomfortable to silence the people around them. We saw this recently with Amy Cooper and any number of incidents that have shown up on the internet. It's a weapon to maintain the status quo and people's positions within their relationships. And the antidotes, I think, so there's something that Sean, you've talked about, and that we also use in our SURJ meetings of ouch, oops. And it's a tool to get more comfortable with the idea of interrupting when something has happened. The ouch is, I felt something, was impacted, was hurt, and creates a space for accountability and someone to acknowledge with an oops, and work out what had happened. But Sean, would you like to say more about that?
Sure. One part, I just, as I'm reading this, that it's a right for me to be comfortable, not a right to comfort others, as I'm reading the top part. I think this ability for all of us to, as we talked last week, to build up self-compassion, and from there will come other compassion. But from that self-compassion also comes this being with. And as the pandemic has brought forward circumstances where we are able to be with ourselves more, you know, most if not all of us have shrunken the circle of people that we interact with live in person on a daily basis. And so that being with myself and dealing with my own discomfort and finding a way to be okay with discomfort within myself or conflict within myself is really a wonderful way to build up my endurance, my resilience for open conflict, for conflict with other people. That is just the nature of life, that things are in interaction, just as molecules are in interaction, and some of that's going to create friction or discomfort. And again, noticing where my resilience is, how do I take a time out for me when I notice my defenses going up. Those are great ways to look after my nervous system, which is the best thing I can offer to the world, is helping my nervous system continue to come back into regulation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right, my lecture time is coming to an end. Nicolette, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, I just wanted to touch on implicit bias because Sean had brought it up, that it was something on everybody's mind. So implicit bias is something that's unconscious or subconscious. It's your attitudes or stereotypes that affect your understanding, actions, and decisions. And this is on like a not aware level. So our task is to actively seek to make it conscious, and through all of our learning and challenging and questioning and recognizing the characteristics of our white culture, really examining that is how we can seek to make these things conscious. You know, we all grow up being exposed to messages through people around us or the media or experiences that we have in different places. So these kind of become part of our subconscious, and it's part of our task is to really examine those things. And I appreciate this definition also because it points out that implicit bias and then also explicit bias, the ones that you actually express and know about yourself, those work together with the structural racialization systems in our society. They all reinforce each other. And implicit bias can be really, I guess, the most damaging because of the fact that it's unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
Implicit biases are pervasive, everyone has them. They don't necessarily align with your declared beliefs, but they're, like I said, again, they're messages that have been received over time and have kind of seeped into our brain, or it's part of the whiteness that surrounds us that maybe we don't always recognize because we see it as just our everyday normal way of being and living. And then implicit biases are also malleable, so they can change over time, and we tend to hold them when it favors our own beliefs, like it reinforces the beliefs that we have. So just becoming more mindful of implicit biases that we might have, unconscious ones, and then trying to bring those up and examine those. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, the idea that if we don't do something, we will reenact these traits of whiteness. That it's about building the capacity to see through these things that otherwise will manifest.
Mm.
Oh, I want to add just a bit in here. Goes way back, something called the Johari window, about looking at what I know about me and what others know about me. That's like public knowledge or common knowledge. And then there's what I know about me that others don't know about me. That would be a secret. Then there's what others know about me that I don't know about me. It could be what you can see about me that I can't see of myself, ways that I make an impact. And I think that's really a part of some of this. And then there is that what I don't know about me and what others don't know about me, this kind of blind spot. And again, we're really working on an individual basis, how do I come out of disassociation? We've gotten into this as a worldwide culture of tuning out. And so, of course, if no one's looking, no one's paying attention, no one's aware, horrendous atrocities happen under those circumstances. And that tuning out, I think, comes out of the unbearableness of staying in the tolerating of one human being hurting another human being, or other kinds of harms being done. So this journey back into awareness, this part of knowing my own internal pain, knowing my own self, and then again cultivating this sense of self-compassion that leads to others' compassion. My prediction right now is, from this epidemic, we are all going to be more Buddhist, or have the opportunity to step into more Buddhist principles as a way to really heal these large cultural phenomena.
Yeah, that reminded me of that this isn't something we can do alone. We can't develop awareness of our implicit biases alone, thinking. Certainly there's room for reflection, but it's in interaction, it's in being challenged, it's in observing other people that we learn these things. Are we ready to move on to ideas around allyship?
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Nicolette?
So I just put this little definition. It's not really exhaustive or anything, but in my mind, an allyship is an active, consistent, and arduous practice of unlearning and reevaluating, in which a person in a position of privilege and power seeks to operate in solidarity with the marginalized group. So kind of the idea of using your whiteness, your white privilege, to operate in solidarity. We're not acting out of guilt, but out of responsibility. And we're acting out of a genuine interest in challenging larger oppressive power structures. And we recognize it's not enough to be non-racist. We must be actively anti-racist and working against these structures of racism and white supremacy. I mean, it's not enough to just say that you're a good white person and that you're not racist and that you're not part of the problem, because as we've seen in discussing culture and these characteristics, it's part of our everyday life.
Yeah, I think it's also, I mean, there's a lot of discourse around allyship. I think something to be aware of is it's not necessarily a label that we get to give ourselves. You know, I think when we talk about allyship, it's a practice. It's something that that we're continuously working on, but that it's not for us to say that we're allies, right? This is something that people may come to see you as an ally through the work and solidarity that you manifest in the world. But it's not a button that we get to go out there and pin on ourselves.
Right. And that makes me think, I always think in my mind that allyship, like, instead of thinking of myself as an ally, like, it is a verb, it's an action that I'm doing. Like, allyship is what I'm striving for, not to be labeled as an ally.
Yeah, totally.
It seems to be even in and of itself a bit of white supremacy culture, right? That
absolutely.
I get to be this rescuer.
Yeah, and white savior complex. There's a whole strain of humility that I think is and this would be humility like very broadly defined, of a decentering self, of you know, not needing to build up this idea that I have of who I am, but to just be, and to not need to be seen a particular way. Comes up a lot.
So these are the responsibilities. We actively acknowledge our privileges and openly discuss them. So as recognizing that we're recipients of privilege, we know that we can always perpetuate these systems of oppression. So we need to openly discuss them and really acknowledge and analyze them. We listen more and speak less. We hold back on our ideas and resist the urge to save people we work with because they know what their own needs are and what they need to accomplish those goals. We do our work with integrity and direct communication, and we take guidance and direction from the people that we seek to work with. We don't expect to be educated or emotionally supported by others, especially the people that we seek to work with, the marginalized groups or others. And we build our capacity to receive criticism and embrace the emotions of allyship. So all these discomfort, all these emotions that come up, we really need to embrace them and take the time to take self-care for ourselves during those processes. And we don't expect awards or special recognition, so that's what we were just talking about.
And we're about at the 10-minute point. We knew we had a lot of content we wanted to get through, and want to keep some time for Q&A. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to go through a couple fast or no?
Yeah. Yeah. How do you want to summarize some of the messages around allyship?
Yeah. I think going back to the characteristics of white supremacy, the perfectionism and all those things, that leads me to remember that allyship is a marathon and not a sprint. And we're not trying to get these perfect. We don't have the sense of urgency around it. It's just really about those relationships and building trust, and that takes time. and change really takes time. So being mindful of our own emotions and taking that time for self-care, I think, is important. Also remembering why you're doing this work, what really like sustains you in this work, you know, where your heart really is coming from.
Mm-hmm. These are really good prompts. We did share the slides, so you can pull these up in a more casual way and spend some time with them. But these are some really great lines of inquiry to think about how you are in space with folks.
Yeah, and so this is a anti-racist pledge. We want to go through it.
Let's leave
Find
it as
online.
this is a thing that you can go pledge. The link is there, and it'll go out with the follow-up document.
So much to be said.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Really powerful, just reflections, you know, of what's really happening around us and what's happening within us. You know, that they're a parallel process. And I know we had a couple of folks who turned in some questions. Jonathan, Nicolette, do you want to take those?
Yeah.
From earlier?
Let me see if I don't think I have it up. Were there any questions from folks who have been listening that have come through?
I don't have any questions from folks who have been listening. One of them, you know, Nicolette, was about, you know, how can I be active and do this with my child? And I was just thinking about you being a mom as well, of how you've navigated that role of every moment is a learning opportunity with my kid. And maybe want to kind of speak to that. Like, it's not necessarily at the big rallies where you're teaching your child about how to be an anti-racist, but it's in those sort of daily life moments.
Yeah, I think they recognize, especially with young children, you know, they're watching our every move pretty much when learning from everything we do. So I think it's really important to recognize that, you know, taking them to rallies and showing them how life is really lived by other people and around you is important. I think books, there's a lot of really great resources and children's books that are available on different topics, and then I would say just examining your own reactions that you have to situations or things that you find unfamiliar, the reactions that you have to your children's inquiries about differences of people. You know, we really have to be mindful that we are staying calm and open and modeling for them like how we learn about different people and how we are respectful of differences in different people. And I think something that kids can really relate to is that concept of fairness. And so that's kind of a way that we can frame like justice work, is like that concept of, is it fair? You know, like kids are still in that, when they're younger, they're in that phase of everything's about them. So but developing their capacity for empathy, the social emotional piece of really empathizing with people and learning about who they are and why they are the way they are, I think is important.
And I would add, really, as you said, Nicolette, speaking from your weak suit, you know, speaking from your own vulnerabilities, places where you've struggled, I think that, again, kind of models a more cooperative spirit as opposed to only talking about what I did well or my achievements or the shiny side or my strengths, but really leaning into my vulnerabilities.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
Another thing I would offer is looking at media. What are the stories? What are the movies? What are the TV shows that that you're watching yourself, that you're sharing with your children, or I have a nephew and niece. So what are ways to expand the stories that they're engaging with, and are we reinforcing a dominant narrative, or are we finding ways to challenge it and share different ways of understanding the world and our place in it?
Yeah.
And someone had, I think, brought up last week about this idea of, the conflict that, of course, comes up between implicit bias, imposter syndrome, and perhaps my strivings to be anti-racist. And so, can you guys talk a little bit about how you may have experienced that in your own goings on in the world?
Yeah, I'll go. There the moments where you have to come to terms with this thing that I did challenges my understanding of myself. It's hard, but the two are very much connected, right? There's no anti-racist practice without coming up against your own manifestation of implicit bias. And so we have to find a way to be more gracious with ourselves and others. But I see them as really kind of inherently linked.
Right. I can only now be aware. The first I might not have even been aware that I had implicit bias or where it showed up. And then the journey, again, might continually be, oh, thank you for revealing to me another nugget of what was unaware to me. And now I know, and with my knowledge, I can do differently.
Totally. And be a better person in the world in all kinds of ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Nicolette, do you have a personal story you might share with us related to that?
I'll just say that imposter syndrome, I think, is something that maybe never goes away. I mean, I don't know. You work on yourself and doing this for so long, but there's always going to be those questions in your own head or from other people, like, why are you doing this? What, who are you? You don't know, But I think that's something that helped me kind of frame it in a different way, was learning about the concept of growth mindset and just kind of looking at this anti-racism work as a practice in that growth mindset and really growing my own capabilities of seeing things not as mistakes but opportunities for growth.
I guess to me that connects a little bit to the practice of mindfulness, that I'm never going to get to being mindful. It's continuously going to be, I have an intention of being conscious and mindful, and my brain distracts away. And then it's the returning back, or the repair work that happens in a relationship. The discomfort and the learning is the thing.
Yeah, that's really nice.
I know you guys had a couple of upcoming events, so I want to give you an opportunity to give a shameless plug for those before we go.
Sure, thank you. Well, our regular SURJ meetings are the last Tuesday of every month. 7 to 8:30 on Zoom. You can sign up for notifications from our Facebook page. Currently our URL, SURJ-VC.org, goes to our Facebook page. There will soon be an actual website, so you'll be able to keep up with us without having to be on Facebook. And tonight, there is a special city council meeting around removing the Junipero Serra statue in front of City Hall. So we would invite folks to take a moment to stand in solidarity and either give a written comment, or if you can gather up the courage, it's always a little intimidating, but give a spoken comment tonight. That would be wonderful.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, thank you both again so much for your humble, leading by example and sticking your neck out and coming today to share with your knowledge and share your journeys with us as we are all in this together, kind of figuring it out, and I hope supporting each other. So thank you all for attending and bringing forth your questions. Again, we will send this information out to all of you, and our thank you, along with the additional resources that Nicolette and Jonathan provided. So we wish you well, safely, and a safe and secure good summer, and hope that this kind of feeds your heart and nourishes you as you continue to do you in the world. So thanks again. Take care, everyone.